Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And once again, thank you for joining us for yet another conversation on the Pure Digital Passion podcast with Moses Kemibaro. Today, I'm very excited to have two representatives, one being Jitt Battacharya from a company called BasiGo, who are leading the innovation around electric mobility in this country, specifically for the public transport sector. And also with us today is Robert Mburu, who's representing the asset finance business of Kenya Commercial Bank, who are the ones providing financing solutions for BasiGo. Thank you very much for joining us today, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And thank you for joining us. So I've been looking forward to doing this, I think, for the last couple of weeks since you made that incredible announcement regarding your partnership. And it's really interesting to see how, the whole EV space is starting to take shape in the country. BasiGo being one of the first pioneers, and I think KCB being the first bank to do this. And maybe we can start off with you, Jid. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. What's your background? How did this idea come about? And then Robert, you'll share a little bit more with us around, how this partnership works with BasiGo.
Sounds great. And thanks again for having us. So my background, I am an electrical engineer by training. And I've been working in the clean energy and electric mobility space now for over 15 years, actually going back to Silicon Valley.
No way, that far
Yeah,
back.
that
Okay.
far back. Okay, all
Okay.
the way back to 2007. It's actually where I first got started. I was leading an electric vehicle technology company in Silicon Valley in the period from 2007 to 2014. Very, very early days of the e-mobility industry globally. I joined in 2017. I joined a pay-as-you-go solar home system company called Phoenix International. We were like the M-Kopa of Uganda.
Okay.
And that's really what brought me over here to Africa. Saw the enormous potential of combining these rapidly evolving clean energy technologies with digital finance. And as we know, here in East Africa, we're some of the leaders in the world around digital finance. It's also where I met my co-founder, Jonathan Green. So I was the chief technology officer at Phoenix. He was the director of strategy. And we, in 2020, the origination of this idea around BasiGo really came in March of 2020. I think this is something you all remember. In the first 3 days of the COVID pandemic, the government stopped all the matatus from operating in Nairobi just for a handful of days. They were trying to get a handle on how they were going to respond. But this, as painful as that was, as frightening as that period was, this magical thing happened here in Nairobi. The air completely cleared. And we all remember being able to see Mount Kenya
I remember the pictures
300 kilometers
circulating on
away.
social media.
They
Yes.
made their way onto the BBC alongside
Yes.
pictures of New Delhi and the air clearing in New Delhi. We were able to see the Aberdares from my home in Loresho. And what that gave us was a glimpse of what would happen if we could clean up the PSV sector, if we could bring sustainability, if we could eliminate the tailpipe emissions that are choking our city. And that's when Jonathan and I got talking. We knew the technology was close, but we really began examining, is the time right to do this here in Kenya? And the more we looked into it, we said, it's not just that the time is right, it's that the time has to be now. We can't wait any longer from a climate perspective, from an environmental perspective, and now, I mean, the thing we didn't expect from a fuel price stability perspective with everything the country has gone through this year. So yeah, that was the inception of BasiGo. We launched in May of 2021.
Okay.
So we've only been operational for about a year and a half, but it
Mhm.
has been an absolutely incredible year and a half. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about the things that we've been doing since we launched.
So, what is BasiGo? I think it's important maybe to unpack, what it is, what it is that you're doing, the problem you're solving, and maybe give us a sense of where you are today.
Yeah. The mission of BasiGo is simple. We aim to create the future of clean electric public transport in Africa. And we are starting here in Kenya because Kenya really is the most remarkable place in the world to be starting an initiative like this. What are we doing? We are bringing in electric bus technology, state-of-the-art electric bus technology, and then we're making it affordable and accessible and reliable for bus operators to be able to adopt. We're doing that through a number of different mechanisms. We're partnering with leading electric bus technology providers from overseas in order to get really the state-of-the-art technology in electric vehicles and batteries. That's absolutely critical to make sure that the technology performs really well here. We haven't started this yet, but starting next year, we're going to be launching local assembly. So all of these buses that we ultimately deliver to customers will be locally assembled here in Kenya. That's absolutely critical. We provide the charging infrastructure, and when we provide an expert service team to help ensure that these buses last throughout their entire life, and that bus owners, PSV operators here, can get the maximum value from this asset. And then after solving those 4 problems, we solved the most critical problem that we know in the EV industry and in the clean energy industry, the upfront cost. Everybody always talks about this. The upfront cost of an electric vehicle is higher than for a typical combustion engine vehicle, whether you're talking about that for passenger cars, whether you're talking about that for buses. We have developed a novel financing model called Pay As You Drive. That financing model is something that we are partnering with KCB in order to help bring to operators. And that financing model basically makes the upfront cost of an electric bus the same as a diesel bus, while still giving them a savings in terms of the operating cost. So in this way, we help make this technology something that PSV operators here can adopt easily. So that's fundamentally what we are doing as BasiGo. We're catalyzing the transformation of the PSV sector from diesel over to electric.
Robert, karibu sana.
Asante sana.
So, Robert, I'm just curious to understand, because I believe you work in asset management, rather asset finance.
Yes, asset finance.
At KCB, correct? And you were part of the team that decided to partner with BasiGo. I'd like to hear your perspective around why KCB decided to go for such a greenfield opportunity. You're one of the best and the biggest banks in this country. It seems almost disruptive, if I can call it that, to try and do something with a new startup. And I'd just like to hear your perspective around how you were able to get to know BasiGo and also how this partnership came about, and maybe share the finer details about how it works.
Very good. So I think at KCB is actually the first bank to be accredited under the Green Climate Fund. We call it GCF Fund. So much as Jitt has said that theirs is a startup, which we're ideally mostly in banking, we are a bit conservative as banks to fund startups. But the proposition that they shared with us fits very well in our sustainability agenda. By that, I mean that when you look at KCB, especially through the green energy agenda, all we're saying is that we need projects or programs which are sustainable in the long run. And sustainability here comes in several ways. Number one, just like he said, is that the idea around having a clean environment. Yeah, he mentioned about seeing Mount Kenya during the COVID time. And I think that's a very emotive conversation in KCB, where we're saying that if and I'm sure he'll share with you the projections. If in the next 5 years, Kenya can help Kenyans, especially in the PSV sector, procure around 5,000 buses, it will mean that we are going to drastically improve the environment in Nairobi. I think that's significant. Then number two, also from a government perspective, the amount of money that we spend in terms of importing the fuel, yeah, that is good for the economy, and I'm sure we are aware about the effects about drought and the changing climate, which we have to address. And I'm sure recently you know that there are some around 23 counties which are facing severe drought because of this climate conversation. So back to the discussion of the day, we met the BasiGo team 3 months ago. And I think,
only 3 months ago?
Yes, 3 months ago. You can imagine, that fast. And I think we met a very vibrant team. And once we listened to them, we struck a chord. And since they fitted very well in our green energy conversation, then it is a conversation we immediately became enjoined by the hip. So we told Jitt and his team that these are the conversations that we want to drive as KCB. This is a startup, but we are very bullish about working with them, because we know that for any business to move forward in this 21st century, they must be sustainable. Sustainability fits in very well in our group strategy. So that's how we struck that code. And then we told them that, in fact, we've been pushing. We pushed aggressively that we must launch this. We go to market. We must be at the forefront in driving this conversation. And actually, KCB is the first bank in Kenya to partner with an original equipment manufacturer like BasiGo in the PSV sector to launch this. So no other bank in Kenya has done that. And we expect that we will continue with that leadership going forward. I think that's why we are saying that we have to scale this up in a very significant way. And it's good to hear that they want to take this conversation to the East African region, where we feature in around 7 countries. So this is key for us, and we want to drive with BasiGo. They're good partners, and as a financier, because when you look at the model, the financial has to be also at the forefront in terms of facilitating that conversation. The cost aspect, batteries is a significant cost, and I'm sure Jitt will engage us on that conversation. So we are very, very excited about this journey, and we're looking forward to working with them.
I have a question because I think the way you go about the financing, I think, as I recall from the original press releases and so forth, there was essentially almost similar terms to the way you do currently with, I suppose, your conventional fuel buses. But maybe you can share a little bit about maybe was there a novel approach that you had to use regarding the financing model? And I'd just like to hear that perspective from you. And then, Jitt, we can talk a little bit about some of the more operational sides of how the thing works.
Very good. So I think in our conventional funding, we are a bit reserved in terms of, number one, when you look at the contribution that an operator has to put down before they get the bus.
Yeah.
Normally, we fund 70% of the asset, then the sponsor of the project, who is now the operator, chips in their 30%. But in this case, we're saying that we're only asking for a 10% contribution. Yeah. So you can imagine from 70%, we are telling them that we have appetite to the extent of 90% of funding that bus. So ideally, if let's say you look at the cost of the bus, if it's 5 million, so we're telling them that we will come through at 4.9 million. Their contribution is only 500,000, which is very exciting for them. That has actually caused a nice ripple effect in the market. That's number one. Number two.
But also, I want to ask why.
Because we are keen in enabling the PSV operators get as many buses in the market as possible. Because remember, when an operator is coming to us, to a large extent, they normally say that the contribution is quite high. Yeah. So if you tell them to put down 30%, that can be strenuous, and also it affects their operational capital, the working capital.
I get you.
Banking
I get you.
Yeah? So here we're telling them that the 20% that they would have actually put down to get the bus is actually money that they can use to operate the buses, in terms of, say, maybe paying the drivers and the maintenance, if at all there'll be any, So I think that has been a huge motivator to them. Because remember, as a bank, we're saying that we are ready to take a bigger risk in this asset. Because if I contribute 70% if I fund 70% instead of 90%, it means that as a financier, I have a bigger stake in that asset.
Correct.
Yeah, so that has really encouraged them. And that's why you saw in the media is that there are already bookings of upwards of 100 buses, and that's significant now as we move into the coming year. That's number one. Number two, we've also said that our repayments for PSV has been for 2 years. The loan, you take a loan and then we give you a period of 2 years. But now we're saying that they'll be paying over 36 months, and actually we want to make it even much better. Yeah, once we and I think Jitt has said that the operators are saying that if we can even make it, because we understand that the bus has a very long shelf life. Yeah, yeah. So these are things that we're looking at. Although 36 months is also very generous from 24 months, so that's actually 3 years. And given the cost of the bus, they're even saying that they can even accelerate their payments and repay the debt at a much quicker pace. So those ones we think that are motivational features, or rather aggressive features in our proposition, which is really encouraging off-takers who are the PSV operators to request or demand for more buses.
Great. Yeah. Maybe, Jitt, you can also give us your perspective, why KCB, how the model works operationally for you as BasiGo, and how maybe this de-risks some of the possibilities for your business.
Yeah, the partnership with KCB is more than just enabling. It's a requirement for us to be able to partner with local banks like this. And I really want to acknowledge, in many ways, KCB is taking a bold step by being the first to do this. They are bringing asset finance to PSV operators for a brand new technology, a technology we all know we want. Technology we know we want to see deployed across this entire city and across the region, but they're the first ones to take that step, take that technical risk, work with a technology partner like us in order to make it happen. Now, when I say it's required, why do I mean it's required? Well, it all goes back to our pay-as-you-drive financing. And so what Robert was mentioning is that they are financing the purchase of an electric bus, which we are offering, a 25-seat electric bus, for 5 million shilling purchase price. If you go out into the world, most people will ask, how on earth are you selling an electric bus for a 5 million shilling purchase price? That's made possible by our pay-as-you-drive financing model. This is designed now by BasiGo. Okay, so we need the partnership with KCB because even at 5 million shillings, PSV operators here in Nairobi need asset finance in order to be able to make that purchase. Okay, but the reason that we're able to bring an electric bus, a modern, state-of-the-art electric bus, and make it available to PSV operators at that price is through this pay-as-you-drive financing model. And it's a very simple model. Basically, what we are doing is we separate the value of the battery inside of the bus from the actual electric bus itself. The reason we do that is the battery is the most expensive component. It's also the area where there's the most concern. How long will my battery last, right? Will it be there for my life? Well, we take that concern and that risk completely off of the operator. We say, you don't need to worry. When you're buying the electric bus, you're buying it without the battery. And then instead, after you pay for your electric bus, 5 million shillings, you instead pay us a per kilometer fee every single day of 20 shillings, 20 shillings per kilometer. And that fee covers the lease of the battery. So you're leasing the battery every single day from us. It also covers all the costs of charging, and it covers all the costs of service and maintenance. So in one simple fee, they have all of their risk essentially taken away. If there's ever any problem with the battery, BasiGo will come in and service and repair and get that bus up and running on the road. They don't need to worry about charging because BasiGo charging stations are right there ready to recharge that bus and put it into operation. They don't need to worry about any repairs or maintenance or the bus coming down. BasiGo's expert service team is there with spare parts and everything they need in order to keep that bus operational. We are trying to make it as simple as possible for a PSV operator and low risk as possible for a PSV operator to be able to purchase and own and operate this bus. And pay-as-you-drive is how we're able to do that.
So it sounds to me that this is disruptive potentially to how things have been done all along. And even for the bank, I'm sure it's quite different, right?
Yes, I think this is purely disruptive. And the way I'd look at it, just to add to what Jitt is saying, is that since we normally work with the PSV operators, one of the biggest headaches, especially for the investors in this sector, is their inability to be able to have the right controls over the vehicles that are on the road. Yeah. And what do I mean by this? Number one, and also this is also important for a financier, is that tracking has been a big challenge in this market. With this model, tracking is done so well such that even the owner of the bus can be able to diagnose challenges in the bus. You know, they can be able to see how many kilometers are left before the battery goes off, can be able to see any tampering that is happening within the bus. There's also cameras inside the bus.
The cameras in the bus?
Yes, well fitted, yeah. I think that's number one. Number two, also, when you look at controls, especially fuel has been a topical issue, siphoning and all that, yeah. I think it's been a tough market for the PSV operators, but with the pay-as-you-drive model, the buses are being charged at BasiGo's premises. So if it's a full charge, they know how much they need to pay, and it's all digital. You know, it's amazing, yeah, because you get a full charge, they know they're probably going to do 350 kilometers. It's well documented. So the owner of the asset has actually been given the right controls or the right power to be able to manage their business at the comfort of their offices. And even to a financier, you know. So it's even easy, even to the insurance company, to be able to price the premiums, yeah, for those buses. So what we expect, in fact, going forward is that, and this one we've realized since the launch, is that there's a lot of appetite for new investors. There's new money being channeled to the PSV sector, because now for the first time, they're able to get the right controls over the PSV sector. So and I think it's been a journey, because when you look at the reforms in the PSV sector, you know, they were modeled in a way that now they have SACCOs.
Yes.
Now, but they still had a challenge in terms of control. Now, with their BasiGo model, they give them now the right controls. So these SACCOs, you'll actually be seeing them more profitable. Yeah, and we would expect that even the workers will operate in a more happy environment. And even they were confirming to us that even the passengers, actually, when the buses are coming, if they know that the electric bus is the third bus, they are not willing to board the first two buses in front, because they're waiting for the electric bus. Because remember, this is a bus also which doesn't even have the noise that, you know, the engine, the diesel noise that we are familiar with, and also the pollution. So, and they were even quipping and telling us that with the BasiGo, if you're inside, actually the noise comes from outside the bus.
Wow.
Because, you know, it's a departure from what we know. So this is a proposition, and that's why we are very excited about this partnership, that it will sanitize the industry. In the entire ecosystem, everybody will be able to drive a business that is, number one, sustainable, and the employees are happy, you know, the environment is okay. So it's win-win in all parameters. And that's why we are very aggressive about putting our money in a company that is only 1.5 years old. So it's very exciting for us. And that's and back to what you've said about disruption. Now, this is a real disruption in the PSV sector.
Yeah. You know, there's something that just came back to mind, Jitt. And as you know, I met one of your colleagues some months ago.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about some of the technology driven elements of the vehicle. I think you've alluded to that already. You've talked about tracking and so forth, but maybe you can expound, I think, about the customer experience. I mean, the cameras, of course, that becomes now a safety opportunity. People can, reassure that anything happens on the bus, it's there. Talk about the customer experience, but I think when I spoke to your colleague the last time, he also spoke about the driver experience. Maybe you can talk about some of those salient points. And I think the last thing I'd like to mention is maybe, I know there's also a novel way that you do the insurance component as well for the buses, yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of the greatest things with the transition to electric is there are wins across the entire value chain, across all the stakeholders, passengers, drivers, owners, the public and the environment, the government, when we think about how much money we're spending on importing fuel right
Yes.
now compared to using the domestically produced renewable energy, which we have in abundance here in Kenya. There's so many benefits across the entire sector. And one of the best parts is actually when we look at the bus itself and that experience specifically for passengers and for drivers and everybody who's operating every single day, relying on getting that bus in order to go to work. So we have seen this firsthand. For the last 6 months, we have been pilot testing buses with City Hopper and with East Shuttle. So 2 separate SACCOs here in Nairobi. And the pilot has gone incredibly well. So those 2 buses have now driven over 90,000 kilometers. They have carried over 112,000 passengers here in Nairobi. They have been in daily operation, just like any other matatu. They have also avoided 17,000 liters of diesel consumption. They have mitigated 42 tons of CO2.
What?
And in 6 months, they have actually had over 98% uptime for our operators, a level of reliability no diesel bus can ever operate. And yet that doesn't even speak to every day, like Robert mentioned, there's people who go to the stages. If they're already traveling along these routes where the 2 pilot buses have been operating, if they know the electric bus is coming, they will wait because it is such a more comfortable and technology-enabled ride than what they're accustomed to, right? We are accustomed to getting on a bus and there's noise, there's that smell of the diesel fume and the diesel exhaust, right? Who knows what kind of comfort we're actually sitting in. Here, when they board the electric bus, they can talk to their neighbor. They can charge their phone at the USB charge port that's next
So
to
every seat has
its own USB charge port. There's free Wi-Fi on board that actually works, so they're able to work on their phone without using data.
And how do you pay? Cash or M-Pesa? How do you pay when you board?
When you board, it's exactly like a typical matatu. So there is still a conductor. Nothing is different. And the most remarkable part about our pilot, the one, I'll never forget this quote that we had with one of the passengers. As she was getting on, there was a journalist on the bus. And she said, the thing that amazed me is I was expecting to have to pay a much higher fare. And actually, she's like, I was shocked that the fare was the same. The rest, this bus is operating, this electric bus is operating exactly like the existing matatu. And that's critical. If we're going to build a scalable model for deployment, we have to make sure that we're working to a degree within the existing ecosystem and valuing all the stakeholders, the drivers, the owners, the conductors, the touts, the mechanics, everything. And that's really key here. So this electric bus is working in the traditional matatu sector exactly like any other bus that you see here in Nairobi. But just with a level of passenger experience and comfort and safety that you cannot get from a diesel bus, and a level of reliability and uptime that owners just cannot believe because they've never seen it in a diesel bus.
Tell me a bit more about the insurance piece. How does that work exactly?
So well, let me actually, I'm going to go back to one other question that you asked before because I didn't touch on it. Let me talk a little bit about some of the other technology differences that are really key that especially relate to the reliability. So right now, when you're driving a diesel bus, if you're a diesel bus owner here in Nairobi, every single month, you have to take that bus down in order to do an oil change. Every single month, you're taking that bus down because you have to service the transmission, okay? Every single month, you're having to replace brake pads because you're using your brakes so much. And the stop and go, our endless traffic that we have here in Nairobi is constantly stop and go. In an electric bus, you have no engine. You have no oil changes. In an electric bus, you have no transmission. You have no transmission service. It's direct drive. In an electric bus, we have regenerative braking. That means when the driver is stopping, when they're slowing down, they're actually sending energy back into the battery, extending the range that they can drive. That also reduces how much they're using the brakes. So the brake wear, their brake life gets extended. All of these are benefits that go to the owner that make that bus available much, much more. Okay. On top of that, I think from an insurance perspective, one of the things that's really unique here is in our financing model. In the pay-as-you-drive financing model, BasiGo retains ownership of the battery, and we are essentially leasing it to the owner as they operate the bus on a per kilometer basis, right? As a result, what we're able to do now is we're able to go to insurance providers, and we're almost able to get bulk discounts on insurance that we are able to provide. And then, as Robert was mentioning, we're doing a level of tracking and data collection on these buses in order to verify their performance, in order to enable this pay-as-you-drive model. We're able to use that tracking now in order to get better insurance rates and better terms for owners, which we can then pass on to owners in order to further make the bus more available, more affordable.
So the insurers actually have clear visibility. They know the momentum. They know what's happening, the volumes, kilometers covered, driver track record, all that stuff is there for them. Yeah. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how you guys sort of coordinate with the insurers to make that happen.
Yeah. So I think insurance has also been a very big challenge in the PSV sector.
Yeah, for sure.
As we know it. And I think primarily because of the lack of, maybe for a lack of a better word, the opaqueness in the management.
We know where you got that one from.
That's a gentle term. It's a very gentle term.
Yeah, in the general management of the bus. But I think, just like Jitt said, is that the insurance company now also will be able now to analyze the data, which Jitt is ready to share in terms of the driver, in fact, Jitt also has, I don't know whether you should also mention about the trainings of the drivers, because they're doing a bit of training for them in terms of managing these buses. And you will also find that with insurance and the way the model is, there's a battery component and there's a vehicle component, yeah? Which as a bank also, that's something also that I need to mention is that we also offer insurance premium finance. So instead of, if maybe the premium is, say for argument's sake, 300,000 per annum, we have a product that enables the customers to pay in easy monthly installments, which where now they pay, say, per month around 20,000 over the loan tenor of this bus. So it's also good for them. Yeah, it's a benefit because there's no upfront cost of paying the whole insurance.
And they're managing the cash flow there.
Exactly. Then still on insurance, and just like I had said, we expect, because they've seen that the premiums for an electric bus are actually going to be much lower than the premiums in the long run, than the premiums for a diesel bus. Yeah.
Which is actually riskier now.
Yes, because this one is less riskier because of all these controls that Jitt has mentioned. Yeah, and I think also that now will be very good for the operators in terms of money, more money to them. Yeah, we're just speaking about this sustainability where it's win-win for all of them. Because on the insurance side, ideally how it works is that they get premiums for the majority, then the minority will be compensated in case there's a claim. But in this situation, I think there'll be money back to the operators because we do not foresee, claims around maybe a vehicle being stolen. Then, because how do you steal it?
Yeah. it's a very good point.
Yeah, that's a valid point.
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, the accident level, based on the driver trainings that they're carrying out, they're very extensive because we've been there and we've seen, or we're very confident. And then even the wear and tear of this bus. Yeah. Because recently, I'm sure you heard that insurance companies were a bit jittery about the electric vehicles that, I think diesel vehicles being swapped to electric, and they were saying that since the manufacturers, because they were being locally done, but these buses are coming from BYD, which he alluded to, which is the largest electric bus manufacturer in China and
in the world.
Actually, yeah. So you find that there's a lot of comfort from an insurance point of view. So the premiums definitely.
It's not a retrofit or something,
Exactly. And I think just to add to this, I think this is actually one of the most critical elements when we think about a new technology like this, a technology we all want, but a new technology like this being introduced into the public service vehicle sector, right? This is critical. Safety has to be top of mind. And the greatest thing, the thing that is absolutely a requirement within our model is we work with manufacturers who have proven technology that has been already operating in millions of kilometers in other markets. And we're bringing that technology here, working with the likes of a BYD, right, whose buses are now operating in 50 countries and 300 cities around the world, have been operating already for a decade. That's how we have good confidence that this technology is safe and that the technology is reliable. That's absolutely critical as we bring in a new technology into such a highly visible, highly utilized space. Yeah.
I'm guessing when you said the cameras on the bus, I imagine there are cameras at the front and the back as well, in terms of seeing what the driver is doing as he drives, correct?
Right now, the cameras on the inside of the bus are really to give the driver information. They're giving the driver perspective without having to look over his shoulder.
Really?
What's
Okay.
happening inside the cabin. And yes, there's a backup camera, something that is very novel, not present on any of our diesel buses. There's a backup camera for whenever the driver needs to reverse.
Yeah, because I'm thinking that, one of the challenges, obviously, as we know the history of matatus, I mean, just yesterday, I got completely pushed across lanes by a guy breaking, traffic laws, clearly. But the idea is that you can also now monitor or be able to check whether this vehicle was driven in a safe manner, correct? I imagine so.
That can become an element of what it is that we are doing. Right
Yeah.
now, it's primarily to help the driver basically manage their daily, this is their daily job, right? And we know they have passengers getting on and off. The situation behind them is very uncontrolled. And so the first step for us was really to give them the tool to better understand what's happening with their bus, to understand their surroundings and help make their job easier. Right, they're a key
Excellent.
stakeholder in this entire equation as well. And I think, going along those lines, I think one of the other points that Robert brought up that's very important. When we think about introducing this technology into this market, we can't just say, oh, what's the purchase price? We can't just say, what's the OpEx? We have to look at the entire model altogether. What are these PSV operators dealing with in terms of the costs of paying off their loan, in terms of the cost of insurance, in terms of the cost of service, in terms of the cost of fuel? I mean, one of the best things about our model right now is we are offering diesel bus operators a pathway away from diesel. What's happening with fuel prices in the country is absolutely crushing the PSV industry. Okay, we are offering a pay-as-you-drive subscription at 20 shillings a kilometer. Right now, diesel bus operators are paying anywhere from 30 to 50 shillings per kilometer because of diesel at 165 per liter, and we're all expecting that the price might go even higher.
Wow.
We are offering such a significant savings, but that's not enough. We also need to think of, is the bus affordably priced so that their loan payments are manageable? Is the insurance affordably priced so that the insurance is affordable, and is the uptime there? And right now, we are winning on all of these different metrics coming out of these 6 months of operation. These 6 months of operation have taught us so much about how to make an electric bus succeed within this market.
So it's very much a holistic approach. You're looking at all the angles, making it easy to get the adoption right, and then, of course, the running costs, as it were. At this point in time, I know that you've just run a 6-month pilot, so this is kind of like possibly early days. You're probably going full commercial very soon with the financing, and I imagine the customers coming on board. Who are your customers in terms of, is it just public transport? I imagine, school buses. I imagine down the road, maybe transporters will use you. But I'm just curious to understand, who are the customers that you see coming on board for your product?
Eventually, we see every bus that's operating in East Africa as a customer. For today, because we're just getting started,
Yeah.
our focus is PSV operators, and there's a specific reason for that: the amount they drive. PSV operators here in Kenya are driving 80 to 90,000 kilometers per year. What does that mean? That means that their emissions, their diesel emissions, that means their CO2 emissions are incredibly high. One of the reasons we started this business, as we mentioned in the beginning, was the air pollution impact of what we would achieve if we can clean up this sector. But the other is because of this remarkable opportunity we have here in Kenya. Over 90% of the electricity feeding our grid is coming from renewable sources.
Absolutely.
And not intermittent renewable sources. This is geothermal and hydropower, stable baseload. Currently, all over the world, billions of dollars are going into electric buses, to electrifying public transport fleets all over the world, right? From China to the US to Europe to India to Latin America. And yet, if we replace a single diesel bus here in Nairobi with an electric bus, we immediately mitigate 50 tons of CO2 per year. Why?
That's
Because
massive.
while we have 90% of our electricity coming from renewables, other cities around the world are struggling to get to 20, 30%, even in the Western countries. An electric bus here has greater marginal impact on climate emissions than almost anywhere else in the world. Reason for that are clean energy and how much our PSVs drive. So to maximize that impact, to maximize the visibility of this technology in the market, we're focusing for the time being on PSV operators. So we're very excited to have a number of new buses on their way. They're going to be launched at the beginning of next year with major SACCOs all over Nairobi. And so right now they're going into PSV operations, and they'll be available. The one other very important reason for this is matatus, buses, they are the most affordable and accessible mode of transport for the vast majority of people here. And you were asking me this question before we started, is Africa ready? In fact, we think that it's not just that Africa is ready. Sustainable mobility technologies need to be available for the masses if they're going to have their greatest impact. This is not just technology for the rich. And we're so proud as a company to be bringing this into the PSV sector, which serves people. We're bringing sustainable mobility to people of all income levels. And that's something we're very proud of.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, I love the thinking that, go for the market that has the biggest culprits, I suppose, of the carbon emissions, and then concurrently, when you map it to the fact that Kenya is largely renewable energy when it comes to our electricity. So I like the idea that, basically then you're saying that we're essentially local content, as it were.
Yeah.
The vehicle, how you fuel it, it's all local content.
It's the biggest, right? I mean, we're feeling this. Why are the fuel prices rising, right?
Yeah.
We're having all these conversations now in the country about fuel subsidies and where is our money going as a country? How much of it are we sending overseas to these oil companies? Meanwhile, we have an excess of renewable energy on our grid, domestically produced renewable energy here in Kenya. And the greatest thing when we talk about expanding to the rest of the East African region, Kenya leads the way here in East Africa, but that similar characteristic exists across East African countries. So this is the right initiative for this region. And in fact, the rest of the world should be putting more attention and more money here for us to accelerate this transition.
Yeah. Robert, we spoke a little bit earlier, and I think you mentioned something and talked about the green climate proposition that you're part of. But I think you also mentioned something about Kenya Power and how that sort of fits back into what Jitt is talking about. Maybe you can expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I think the conversation about the green energy is there are very many sectors that are very keen on this, and I think just like I'd mentioned, we are aware that around 2-3 months ago, Kenya Power are doing a pilot so that they can have all these mobile charging ports around the country, which is very, very exciting for us. And I think once we heard about this their proposition, we could clearly see that this is where let's say the sustainability agenda is going, and there has to be a bank that takes that leadership in bringing all these stakeholders together in a very smart way, so that in the next 2 to 3 years we should be able to such that if a PSV operator or even a school bus is in a place like Lodwar, far-flung areas, Marsabit, they should be able to enjoy that benefit. And I think when you look at Kenya Power taking that route, it clearly tells you that there's huge opportunity in that space. And they've also seen what the private sector is equally doing. And we're also seeing a lot, in fact, for the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot of engagements, people getting a lot of this interest, even operators of electric motorcycles. They've been calling and saying, we saw you guys do this with BasiGo. We also are doing this, and we know what Kenya Power is doing. And there are a lot of charging ports around the city. There's ABC, there's a hub. Within Nairobi, we can clearly say that because even the electric cabs, I'm sure you're aware.
Yes,
about
I've
that.
seen those. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting conversation for us. So for us, we are not just looking at maybe one sector, if it's electric motorbikes or BasiGo, but it's a national dialogue, because now Kenya Power are there, KCB, the biggest bank, is there, and we are ready to propel this to the next level. So I think this is the right environment. In fact, back to what you said, whether Africa or maybe Kenya is ready. Kenya was ready. It's just that it needed players like ourselves who are ready to put our money in a supposedly risky initiative, which is not, because all parameters clearly show you that this is the way to go. Yeah. So we know that many players are going to come on this, but I can guarantee you, if we probably have another podcast in 1 year from today, this environment will be different.
I'm sure.
The disruption will have happened and will be scaling up now to the other East African countries.
Yeah.
I have to ask a question, maybe back to you, Jit. Regulatory, regulations, policies, government. What's happening in that space to support the adoption of electric vehicles in the marketplace? Is this something where things are more or less status quo the way they've always been? Is there a transition happening? Is there lobbying? And I think this really is sort of an ecosystem conversation because
Yeah.
the financing side need that to work. You, as the supplier of a product, need that to work. So, what's happening around the regulations and what the government of Kenya is doing in this space?
No, it's a great question. I mean, we're talking about a transformation of the entire transport system, right? Across multiple sectors, micromobility and bodas, public transport, eventually passenger cars. We're talking about a transformation. And similarly, there's a transformation in regulations that are happening in order to be able to enable this sector. Okay, because there is acknowledgement from government right now that this is the right thing for Kenya to do. Both the previous administration and the new administration all acknowledge electric mobility is going to be a key way for the country to get off of imports of petroleum fuel, of diesel and gasoline. It's a great way for us to bolster our electricity sector and
Yeah.
KPLC. So there is movement and there's lots of discussion happening. Nothing has been gazetted or finalized yet, but the discussions they started with the previous administration and they're picking up now with the new administration as well.
I think it's going to be a key enabler because I think it's in Norway, which has become a model globally. I don't have the exact numbers, but I think is it the majority of new cars sold in Norway today are actually
Yeah,
electric,
it
right?
was an amazing statistic when I
Yeah.
saw that. Yeah,
So I'm imagining and hoping maybe Kenya follows that, and again with our green energy,
yeah.
the possibilities that might exist there.
And all of the benefits to the public as a result of accelerating the transition.
Yeah. So imagine working with KCB. There's a bigger conversation around Nairobi. Obviously, is the starting point, but what are you guys thinking around the counties, the regions, and how to also push your product and your proposition across the country?
The greatest thing about our model and then partnerships like what we built with KCB is that we are ready to scale, but we want to scale once we have built the proof points. And Nairobi is the perfect test environment for us to build those proof points, especially around the financing model. So we've been running this pilot for the last 6 months. The pilot's purpose was really to demonstrate. A lot of people didn't believe the technology was viable. Like you said, people were worried, well, what happens if the bus runs out of charge?
Exactly,
Won't
yeah.
the bus constantly break? Will it survive our road conditions? We just proved over 6 months that absolutely it can survive. And more than that, it can outperform diesel in every single way. The next step now is to take our model commercial. And that's exactly what's happening in the coming months with our premier customers and the buses that we'll be delivering in the beginning of next year. Once those customers receive those buses and they're actually in operation with financing from the likes of KCB, with pay-as-you-drive financing, we'll now be in a position to now take this to scale. And what does scale mean? Well, scale obviously means there's an enormous bus market here in Nairobi, so much market for us to deal with, but also we can expand this geographically to other cities around Kenya. The PSV sector works very similarly in other cities in Kenya. We can very easily now expand the model there and offer the same technology and the same benefits to other cities in Kenya. We are excited to take this to other bus sizes, right? Both larger buses, but then eventually finding a way to bring this technology even down to the 14-seat matatus and finding a way to implement this for intercity travel. Electric is not yet great for long distance,
Yeah.
but for intercity from Nairobi to Naivasha, right? Or Nairobi to Mburu, things like that. It's a perfect fit. We are excited to take this to intercity travel as well. And then eventually to even expand this to other vehicle classes. Any high mileage, medium or heavy duty vehicle, electric, given the characteristics of fuel price and electricity costs that we have here, electric can be a compelling alternative. And so once we prove this model here over the next year here in Nairobi, this financing model enables massive scale so long as we have the right partnerships like what we have with KCB.
So I'd like to ask you again, that looking out, let's call it future casting, 2 to 5 years from where we are today. Where do you think this is going for BasiGo and I think the broader ecosystem? And I think also, Robert, if you can also share a perspective after Jitt on what you see in 2 to 5 years happening in this space.
For us, it's very simple. In 5 years, we want to see 1,000 electric buses here on the roads of Nairobi.
1,000?
1,000 electric buses on the
Wow.
roads of Nairobi. And on one hand, that seems incredibly ambitious. On the other hand, I will say it's not ambitious enough. the climate emergency, what's causing droughts out in Kajiado and half the country right now, it demands actually faster action than that. But right now, our plan is 1,000 electric buses here in Nairobi, a financing model that's incredibly well capitalized from commercial capital, not from concessionary capital, but from commercial capital that is ready to scale commercial electric vehicle deployment across Kenya and across the region. That's our ambition in the next 5 years.
What about you, Robert, from a KCB perspective?
Yeah, so I think Kenya is very interesting, and I can tell you, especially coming to this green conversation, is that we are seeing a lot of initiatives around the green lending, or maybe the green sustainability agenda, and you find that, in fact, if I just take you back to what government is doing, their government is currently, like, there's a BRT, the bus rapid transport, you know. So you can clearly see that government is already pushing that conversation. And even as we speak, industry players are lobbying EPRA, the regulator, just to get a tariff, you know, a reduced tariff for the EV. So these are things, now with these conversations that are happening, you will find that government, of course, is supportive, wants to play in that space, which definitely is going to play. In addition, it also wants to support the players in that industry. And you'll also see a lot of, do I call, like you know, the green investors, how you do,
Climate investors.
Climate investors. And there are a lot of funds that have been poured in that. And just like he said, you know, looking at Kenya, we're in a very good position because our energy is both hydro and geo, which is very, very sustainable and green. You know, there's some countries where it's difficult for them to say that they're purely green because it's nuclear and maybe coal. But Kenya sits in a very, very good position. So how I'd look at it is that there'll be a lot of funding in this space. We are going to see, I can guarantee you, in the next 3 to 5 years, close to 50% of most of either the automobiles, the motorcycles, they'll be green. That one I can guarantee you, because there are a lot of initiatives that are currently happening. And that's why for us, the excitement is much more than just doing a ceremony in terms of a partnership, because the ripple effects, even for the economy, are going to be massive. And even the current government is fully conversant with that conversation. So you actually, it's a conversation that we must be ready now to start hearing more and more and more of it. So in my opinion, Kenya will be at the forefront, and I think in Africa, it should be number one in terms of taking this to the next level.
Yeah. Amazing. Awesome.
Just adding to what Robert said, I mean, the electric mobility sector here in especially East Africa, but across sub-Saharan Africa, is just set to explode. It's one of the most exciting high-growth tech sectors right now on the continent. And there's so many players. It's not just being driven by government, right? It's not about government forcing this transition and transformation. It's innovative companies like BasiGo, we're proud to call ourselves one of them, that are bringing models that make this economically competitive. We're building markets. We're making this a better option for operators, for boda drivers, for PSV operators. And that means once we get there, this thing is going to take off on its own.
So this is, say, hypothetically, so you had something to say?
Yes, and I think also why also as KCB we're excited, because we are also aware that the second largest personal vehicle manufacturer in the EV sector should be coming to Kenya before the end of this year. They're called Xpeng. You know, they were not in existence the last 2
I
years.
know them. I've heard of them.
They were not in existence. In fact, they're just behind Tesla. But right now, it's one of the biggest companies. So you can imagine. So the disruption, that's why I'm saying that even that 2 to 3 years, I mean, it's even 1 year can just change things so much. It's amazing. Yeah, and it's good that we want to be at the forefront in that engagement, because it's a very exciting time.
I mean, let's be honest, right? Right now, the cost of driving our regular vehicles and the amount of fuel you put in, you think about it. You drive the car and you think, where am I going? Do I really need to go?
Yeah,
I'm proud. On a day I don't drive, I'm very happy.
So the conversation is not whether it's going to happen, but it must happen. It must happen. Those pain points. There are very many pain points.
No, and I think across the population right now, everyone is thinking, I'm thinking about a hybrid at least.
Yeah.
At the very least, a hybrid
Yes.
as the next car in the house, you know, for sure. And I'm just curious again. So let's say, hypothetically, I'm I'm a Matatu operator today, and I want to get a BasiGo. How do I start that process?
Great question. So the easiest way is to contact our sales team either through our website or just through the contact information on our page. And what we will immediately do is we will begin evaluating what is your operation. Is it aligned? Because we are still an early stage company, right? So one example, charging. Because I know this is always a question. Well, can the grid handle this? Where do I charge this electric bus? One of the things that we're doing as BasiGo, because charging is included in the pay-as-you-drive subscription. We make charging seamless, hassle-free, completely in line with how diesel bus operators currently operate their diesel vehicles. What does that mean? We deploy charging, which we own. We're making this investment. We place it directly on the route. So a bus operator is able to use the electric bus and then bring it back to recharge at night, or even if they need to, a little bit during the day, without ever having to leave their route.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we are only a company that's been in existence for a year and a half, so we don't yet have charging everywhere. We're very focused on, as we deploy these buses, which routes are they operating, and then strategically deploying that charging. But any PSV operator who is interested, they're able to meet with us. We examine their route. We say, okay, this is the time frame in which we're able to bring you a bus, get you online. This is what the operation would look like. This would be your savings if you were to go with an electric bus, because if it's not going to make sense for their route, we don't want to burden them with an electric bus. It's critical the technology work. But we're able to go through that entire process, and part of that process is also then introducing them to bank partners who are ready to finance that electric bus purchase on very competitive terms. And we walk them through that entire process. Now, the one problem we have, which is a very good problem to have, is we have over 100 reservations already for buses.
These are guys who booked. They're ready to sign up.
Yes, they're less excited about the technology, and they're recognizing that this is the future. They want to be part of it. They're also feeling the pain of diesel, and they recognize this is the pathway away from that. So yeah, we're always excited to talk to more customers, get more people on that reservation list. It's on us now to deliver faster, to build in the local manufacturing capabilities, the infrastructure capabilities, and to scale and deliver. That's delivering and getting these buses on the road. That's how we achieve all these impacts that we're talking about right here.
And what about for you, Robert, from a KCB perspective, the evaluation criteria? Because I think he's able to do the logistics, the planning, and all that. But you, when you're looking at potential customer for him, what are the things that you guys look for?
Very good. So our evaluation criteria has even been made much more easier because of his pilot. They did a pilot of 6 months. So they're ready and willing to share that data. And we've also interviewed the operators. I think there were 2 operators, 2 SACCO operators who we've had separate conversations about the experience. And we've also done a background check, just to see sustainability, because we are aware that the other operators, not in the PSV sector, but in the EV sector where even certification is a challenge. But with BasiGo, we've done our own due diligence, and we are extremely, extremely happy with the outcome. And we've also, you collaborate that with the experience from the operator, the customer themselves, and even the support, because support is very important. And I think that's why Jitt is a bit modest in terms of talking about the inquiries and the 100 units, because I can guarantee you, because we were in a forum where they actually wanted much more than the 100. So
wow.
Yeah, it's actually much more. But best and I understand where he's coming from, because you're also looking at the infrastructure, the charging and all that. So the demand is much more higher. In fact, more than 500 buses. It's just that they don't want to exit the market that way, so that the support,
we don't want to disappoint. We don't want to make promises and then say, oh, but you're not getting something from it.
Exactly. You just have to be pragmatic about it.
Because of the customer experience, which also we appreciate, because we don't want also a situation whereby buses are much more than maybe the charging points, and then there's a downtime. So for us, and that's why I'm saying that it's very exciting when you get the right partners, because any financier will be very keen as to where they're putting their money. We have the SACCOs who we've looked through, we've appraised them, a usual appraisal mechanism, but most importantly, now with the sustainability conversation that is there and the accompanying controls that he alluded to, then this makes it a very perfect proposition and very bankable for that matter.
Awesome. Now, I know it's still early days. I just have a couple more questions here, but I think I'd like to maybe hear your perspective around lessons learned, positive, negative, things that happened that you didn't anticipate, things that have like probably the demand you're seeing is much higher than you anticipated. I don't know if there's any interesting anecdotes or some thoughts you might share around the journey so far and things that maybe would be interesting in terms of the stuff you experienced and what you're learning on the ground as you roll out.
Yeah, well, so many, and yet the two I think that are the most telling and most prominent in our mind. Number one was the level of enthusiasm, the demand that
Yes.
was unexpected. Partially, it was driven by market factors, such as what was happening with fuel prices. But I think there's also a cultural element here. What we've noticed here in Kenya is that if there's a belief, if you can prove a technology can work, and if you can prove a technology is going to be better, there is a strong willingness to jump ship and adopt that technology. We saw that with M-Pesa, and I think we're starting to see that now with e-mobility and here with electric buses with what we're doing. So we definitely did not anticipate that, and now we have to work to catch up to make
Wow.
sure we can deliver
Yeah.
against that demand. The other was it's not just demand in terms of how many people want to buy buses, how many PSV operators want to buy the buses. It's also demand in terms of how much these buses want to be driven. So one of the
Oh.
most amazing things, we first designed this model. We worked with BYD. We selected an electric bus with 250 kilometers of range that recharges in less than 4 hours. And this is the 25-seat K6 electric bus that we're currently offering to customers. And that was very strategic. We had done our research. We had talked to so many SACCOs and bus owners. And we said, yes, 250 kilometers is approximately what they are doing. So this will give a bus that can work all day and then recharge at night when buses are already sleeping at petrol stations. And so
Yes.
that was the original model. What we did not anticipate, these buses are so popular, drivers want to drive them more. So what we
So
are
the
seeing,
driver experience.
the driver experience, well, they see, and the revenue opportunity. They see a bus that is in demand from passengers. And so they want to drive it more than their diesel buses. And as a result, we are seeing on routes that average usually a lot less with diesel buses, we are seeing daily averages of over 280 kilometers per day, which of course means the bus has to come in. It
Yeah.
only has 250 kilometers of range. It has to come in and partially recharge. So that changed our thinking. Now we said, okay, if there's this much demand from passengers and from drivers, that means we need to make charging even more convenient in case they want to stop in the middle of the day, in case there's days right now where our pilot buses were driven 330 kilometers.
Wow.
And so we have to accommodate for that demand and make sure the bus is doing what these guys want it to do.
And that means also longer distance trips
Yeah.
now becomes another market that you could
Yes.
tap into.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the other insights that I'll point out, because Robert mentioned this earlier, is drivers. Drivers are such a key stakeholder in this entire equation, in this transition. Drivers are a really key stakeholder. And so the 4 drivers that we have had for the pilot, they've been critical partners. I mean, learning the technology, learning how to maximize the performance of the technology. We are so fortunate to have had them as part of this for the pilot. But now we imagine 15 buses that we're going to be deploying here in a few months. We are having to train a new cohort of 40 to 50 drivers. And we're really excited we're actually in conversations with some partners to create a high quality electric bus driver training program.
Like an academy
Ideally,
or something
almost
like
like an
that.
academy, ideally something that could eventually be certified. And in order to prepare a whole new class of drivers
Wow.
positioned to maximize the value of this technology. And the level of interest we have from drivers is overwhelming.
And I imagine that's kind of cool for the driver, right? Because they have this new badge or new notch that they can say, I'm electric bus
That's right.
certified. Yeah.
Yep.
That's very nice. That's very cool. Robert, you seem like you want to say something.
Yes, yes, and I think maybe there's something that we also haven't mentioned about the customer experience, especially with the buses. Jitt mentioned that these buses are their standards are internationally acclaimed. I think it's good to mention there's some things that we don't speak, especially in the PSV sector, where today most of the diesel-driven buses, it's actually a truck where there's a chassis and then a body mounted.
Yes, the build on top. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, and that's why when you're being driven in a bus and probably you go over a bump, you find that people really complain about their backs. You know,
Mm.
you get so their buses are of international standards, such that their suspension system is actually for passenger-driven buses.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a very critical point, and that's why you find that people really complain about back problems, because that is actually most of the buses are actually trucks, yeah, mounted with bus bodies. So which to me And that's why he's also talking about the driver who can drive endlessly. So
Mm.
even the same for passengers who probably even have, they won't have problems of back problems. The people who already have back problems riding in those trucks,
Yeah.
it's a health concern when you look at it that way. So it's also part of that customer experience, which is also very exciting because you brought something in the market which was hitherto, it wasn't there. Yeah. So that's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Jitt, in
All of
my
this, I
opinion.
mean, all of this together, I think the most amazing part of the last year and a half, Moses, has just been seeing the moment we launched these buses, everybody wants this transformation to take place.
It's amazing.
You know, and it might be that they are specifically focused on one of the particular benefits, but everybody in the country wants this transformation to take place. And so
Yeah.
that is a remarkable place for us to be in, for KCB to be in, is to say, okay, well, let's make it happen.
And I think there's something that we have to say about, I don't know what you call it, because I've worked in the industry in the tech space for over 20 years, actually heading more towards 30. And I think one of the things that we've always noticed is that Kenya has a appetite for anything that gives you an edge through technology. You know, whether it was M-Pesa, the very internet,
Yeah.
you know, the adoption of smartphones, and now, you know, electric vehicles. You know, we're seeing that it is a very fertile market for the adoption of new things.
Yeah.
So, guys, I'd like to wrap it up. I think we've had a fantastic conversation. Maybe, Jitt, you can share with us any final thoughts, insights, perspectives that you think our audience would find interesting around this journey of taking BasiGo from where you started to where you are today, and hopefully of the future going forward.
We've had such an extensive conversation. I think we've touched on absolutely everything I would want to share.
Yeah.
I think I always go back to our mission, and our mission is to create the future of clean electric transport here in Africa. And just reminding actually that it's because we have a unique opportunity. We can have greater impact on the environment and on the climate, and then on the concerns that are affecting our daily lives right now. Things like the cost of fuel, things like the air pollution. That's what makes this so exciting. And we have a unique opportunity, unlike anywhere else in the world, for transformative change through this. And we're excited to make it happen. And we're really excited about our partnership with KCB. Partners, you can't do a business like this. You can't execute a transformation like this without partners. And so, yeah, we're really excited about this partnership and what the future holds in the next year.
And Robert, I mean, what I'm hearing from you, and I heard you use this word continuously, sustainability. Sustainability. I'm feeling that this is such a core part of the ethos that is driving KCB as a big bank in the region. And maybe your thoughts again around how you're pairing up good business with good responsibility to the environment and what you're doing as a business.
Yeah, so I think in addition, I'll probably maybe add another adjective that in addition to the sustainability, there's no better way to disrupt the market in a sustainable way than partnering on the e-mobility space. And that really speaks so well with one of our key strategic initiatives, which is to drive business within the region in a sustainable way. So I think for us, the partnership is extremely, extremely exciting. And that's why we've always reiterated this to Jitt and even to our customers that we have to look at this in a way that we leave this world a better place. And there's no better place where we fund or we make communities develop in a sustainable way, which to us that is core in our drive towards ensuring that this world is left in a much better place than we found it.
Great. Thank you so much, Robert, Jitt. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing amazing things from BasiGo. I can't wait to ride on the bus one of these days. Robert, we're waiting to see how you disrupt the market from a financing standpoint as a bank. And of course, even for us consumers down the road, I imagine that there'll be propositions for our own personal vehicles and the likes. But thank you so much. So thank you very much for joining us once again for another podcast today with BasiGo and KCB to discuss the electric mobility scenario for public transport. My name is Moses Kemibaro, and this is the Pure Digital Passion Podcast. I'll catch you in the next.